Hello, my family. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location in the comments. Let me greet you properly. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps this family grow, and it keeps these stories coming every night. Now, let's begin. The candle that shouldn't have lit itself. On the first cold night after my mother was buried, I opened the one room she spent 40 years hiding from me. And the moment I stepped inside, a candle she kept on her dresser flickered to life. No matches, no wind, no one else in the house. That's when I realized my mother's truth didn't die with her. She had been waiting for me to finally see what she'd been protecting. Chapter 1. The room my mother locked for 40 years. The house felt different the morning after the funeral. Not empty. No, emptiness is quiet. This was something heavier, like the walls were holding their breath, like the air didn't know how to move without my mother in it. I spent the whole day cleaning, trying to distract myself from the silence. The kitchen still smelled of her cinnamon tea. Her slippers still rested beside her favorite chair. Every corner whispered her name. But there was one door I had never touched while she was alive. The door at the end of the hallway. Her old bedroom. The room she locked the year I turned 6 and never opened again. My mother wasn't a secretive woman, or at least I thought she wasn't. She baked pies for the neighbors. She taught Sunday school. She told stories that made people laugh until they cried. But that door turned her into someone else entirely. Growing up, if I ever walked too close to it, she would appear from nowhere, her voice tight, her eyes full of something like fear. Not that room, Ilara, ever. And so I stayed away. But now she was gone. And the key, the same rusted key she wore on a necklace for decades, was sitting quietly in my palm. I stood in front of the door, heart pounding like I was about to disturb something sacred. The hallway light flickered once. My fingers shook as I slid the key into the lock. Click. The door opened easily, too easily, as if it had been unlocked all this time, just waiting for her to no longer be here. Inside, the air was colder, like winter had moved into that one room alone. Dust hung in the air, like slow snowfall. The old wallpaper peeled in long curled strips. The curtains were faded, their edges stiff with time. I'd expected the room to smell stale, abandoned, forgotten. But it didn't. It smelled faintly of lavender, my mother's scent, like she'd walked through only moments before. Then I saw the candle, a small white candle sitting on her dresser, one I remembered from childhood. She used to light it every night during storms. Then one day she just stopped. When I asked her why, she only told me, "Some lights aren't safe to keep burning." I stepped closer, my breath clouded in the cold air. I reached out, and that's when it happened. The wick ignited, a soft flame, steady, alive. I stumbled back, so fast I nearly hit the door. There was no lighter, no match, no heat in the room. I hadn't touched anything. The flame flickered once, like it was acknowledging me, or warning me. I whispered, "Mom?" Not expecting an answer, not wanting one. But the room felt different, charged, awake, as if someone else was standing there with me, watching, waiting. I looked at the walls, at the old dresser, at the faded picture frames covered in dust. Why had she locked this place away? Why keep it untouched for 40 years? Why protect it with such fear? My chest tightened, my heartbeat echoed in my ears. Then I noticed something else, something small but chilling, a photo frame lying on the floor beside the bed. Face down. I bent down and picked it up, brushing away dust. The picture made my blood run cold. It was my mother, decades younger, smiling, holding a baby. A baby that wasn't me. A baby I had never seen before. Behind me, the candle flame grew taller. And for the first time in my life, I felt it, the truth pressing against the walls, begging to be let out. A truth my mother had spent a lifetime burying. A truth she never meant for me to discover while she was alive. What was she hiding? And why did this room feel like it had been waiting for me? I set the photo down carefully, my hands trembling. I took a slow step back toward the door, and the candle blew itself out. Not slowly, not gently. It snapped into darkness like a breath sucked away. I didn't run, but I wanted to. I stood there in the dark, feeling the weight of a secret older than my memories. Whatever my mother had hidden or whatever she had protected for 40 years, it had just opened its eyes. Chapter 2. The photograph that shouldn't exist. The house felt colder the moment I stepped out of that room, not because of winter, but because I now carried a truth I wasn't ready for. All night, I sat in the living room with that photo on the table in front of me. My mother, a baby, a smile she never wore in any picture with me. I tried convincing myself it was a cousin, or a child she babysat, or maybe even a symbolic picture she kept for comfort. But no, my mother didn't keep symbolic things. She kept memories, only memories that meant something. And she had locked that room for 40 years. I picked up the picture again, my hands trembling. The baby looked maybe 8 months old, wrapped in a wool blanket, a blanket that felt familiar. I got up and hurried down the hall back to the forbidden room. The door creaked as if it knew I was returning too soon. Inside, the air was still cold, still heavy, still watching me. I lifted the candle, still ice cold from the blowout, and stared at the blanket the baby was wrapped in the photo. It wasn't just familiar. It was the same pattern as the quilt my mother always kept folded at the foot of her bed. The quilt she said was too old and too fragile to be used. A lie. Another lie. I walked to her room and pulled the old quilt from the cedar chest. My heart dropped as I unfolded it. Same stitching, same faded roses, same corner where a tear had been neatly mended. It was the quilt from the photograph, and it hit me like a blade to the chest. My mother wasn't holding a stranger's baby. She was holding someone she loved, someone she mourned, someone she lost, and she had hidden that grief inside a locked room for decades. A soft knocking sound made me jump, not from the front door, not from the hallway, but from inside the forbidden room. A single knock, then silence. I froze. My breath felt trapped in my throat. I stepped slowly back toward the door, clutching the quilt like a shield. "Hello," I whispered. Nothing, just the hum of winter wind outside pressing against the house. But something else caught my eye, a small wooden box under the bed, half hidden by dust and shadows. I knelt down, pulled it out, and wiped it clean. It was carved with delicate flowers and initials burned into the top. M.R., my mother's initials. Margaret Rowan. Inside, I found letters. Old, yellowed, edges frayed, tied with the kind of ribbon mothers keep for baby books and birthday cards. My heart pounded as I lifted them out. They were addressed to her, from someone named Eleanor, a name I had never heard in my life. Hands shaking, I opened the first letter. "My sweet sister, I had to leave town. They won't let me keep the baby. Please take care of her, just until I can come back." I read the line over and over until the words started to blur. Sister? The baby? My mother took care of someone's child, but there were more letters. I opened the next. "Margaret, please forgive me. I can't come home yet. I'll explain everything soon. Just keep her safe." My pulse quickened. My hands went numb. My eyes scanned faster. The third letter broke me. Maggie, if anything happens to me, promise you won't tell her the truth. Promise you'll raise her as your own. It's the only way she'll be safe. The letter fell from my hands. My heartbeat crashed in my ears. Her own, her own, her own. Was this baby? Could the child in the picture? Could she be? No, no, it couldn't be. I stood up too fast, and the room spun. My mother didn't just hide a memory. She hid a life, a story, a truth so heavy she locked it behind a door and carried it alone until the day she died. I looked around the room again, this time with new eyes. The rocking chair in the corner, the faded crib mattress tucked behind the wardrobe, the tiny set of hand-knit socks in the drawer. This was a nursery. This was a life. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the dresser, beneath a pile of old scarves, was a birth record. I picked it up slowly. My breath froze. Baby girl Rowan. Born December 12th. Mother Eleanor Rowan. Guardian Margaret Rowan. The world tilted beneath me. December 12th. That was my birthday. Guardian, not mother. Guardian. I sank to the floor, unable to breathe. All those years, all those memories, all those times she'd looked at me with fear, not anger, fear that history would repeat itself. My mother wasn't my mother. She was my aunt. And the candle, the flicker, the sudden flame, maybe it wasn't warning me. Maybe it was guiding me, telling me, it's time, learn the truth. But one question burned through me harder than all the rest. What happened to my real mother? Why couldn't she come back? And why did my mother, my aunt, hide it for 4 decades? I clutched the birth record to my chest. The room creaked. The window rattled. And then, from behind me, the candle lit itself again. This time, the flame leaned toward the closet, as if pointing, directing, demanding. Whatever truth was inside that closet, it was the one my mother had feared the most. Chapter 3. The closet my mother guarded like a grave. I stood in front of that closet the way someone stands at a gravesite, with dread, reverence, and a feeling that whatever rests inside changes everything forever. The candle's flame leaned toward the door, flickering steadily, almost urging me forward. My mother never believed in signs or spirits, but in that moment, I could swear the house itself was breathing. I wrapped the quilt around my shoulders, more for courage than warmth. The air in the room stayed unnaturally still, as if the house knew I was about to touch something sacred. My fingers curled around the closet knob. Cold, metallic, unmoving. I turned it slowly, and the door opened with a soft groan, a sound like a sigh released after 40 years of silence. Inside, everything was neatly arranged, as if frozen in time. Tiny dresses folded by color, a knitted bonnet, a music box shaped like a rose, a pair of baby shoes tied together with a faded ribbon. But one thing caught my attention immediately, a small wooden chest on the top shelf, different from the one that held the letters. Older, locked. I dragged a chair closer and reached up, expecting it to be heavy. It wasn't. It felt too light, too empty, too deliberate. I brought it down and set it on the floor. A fine layer of dust fell away, revealing a single carved word on the lid. L, short for Eleanor, my real mother. My hands hesitated above the lock. It wasn't a complex lock, just old and rusted. But something about opening it felt like crossing a line my mother never wanted me to cross. Still, the truth doesn't stop calling just because someone tried to bury it. I pulled gently. The lock snapped open with a tired click. Inside the chest, there was only one item, A candle, a simple white candle, nearly identical to the one that had flickered in the room hours earlier. And beneath it, a folded piece of paper, a note. My pulse hammered in my ears as I unfolded it. The handwriting was delicate, familiar. It matched the letters addressed to my mother. Maggie, if the candle ever goes out in this room, it means the truth is no longer safe. It means someone is getting close. And if someone finds this note, it means I couldn't come back. My breath caught. Please tell her gently. And tell her I never wanted to leave. Not her, not you, but I had no choice. The note trembled in my hands. Choice. What choice could separate a mother from her newborn child? What danger was so severe Eleanor feared her own return? I read on. If she ever learns who she truly is, she must also learn what happened to me. A chill cut through me deeper than the winter outside. I unfolded the bottom half. This part wasn't written like a letter. It was hurried, fearful, a final message scrawled in a shaking hand. He found me. If he comes to the house, don't let him near the baby. Don't let him near the family. He is not who he claims to be. He will never stop looking. The last line was smudged, as if written while fleeing. Tell her I love her. Tell her I tried. Eleanor. I sat still for what felt like hours. The stories I'd believed my entire life. My childhood, my memories, my identity, all shifted under me, like loose earth. My mother, my aunt, didn't hide the truth out of shame. She hid it out of fear. Fear of a man who hunted my mother. Fear of a secret that spanned decades. Fear that the past would return. And the candle. This wasn't just a sign. It was a warning. A signal passed from sister to sister, mother to daughter, across time and silence. I looked around the nursery, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. My real mother never made it back. Someone stopped her, and the person she feared, was he still alive? Still searching? Still dangerous? As I stood up, the floorboard behind me creaked. I spun around. Silence. But the candle on the floor flickered violently, its flame bending not toward the closet now, but toward the window. The cold outside deepened. A shadow moved across the snow. Someone, or something, was watching the house, watching me, watching the truth finally unfold. The nursery went silent. The air grew tight, and one thought pushed its way through everything else. If my mother died, running from him, what will he do when he learns her daughter is still alive? Chapter 4. The man my mother feared. The window pane trembled lightly as the winter wind pressed against it. But it wasn't the wind that made my skin crawl. It was the faint shape I'd seen outside, a silhouette standing too still, too quiet, too patient. For a moment, I couldn't move. I stood frozen in the nursery, my breath fogging the cold air, the candle flickering wildly beside me. I told myself it was nothing, a tree branch, a trick of light, just nerves amplifying shadows into monsters. But deep down, I knew better, because nothing in that house had been a coincidence so far. Not the candle, not the letters, not the locked room, and certainly not the shadow outside the window. I forced myself to walk toward the glass. Step by slow step, the wooden floor creaked beneath me. When I reached the window, I saw only snow, pale, unbroken, quiet as sleep. Whoever, or whatever I thought I'd seen, was gone. But the dread in my chest stayed right where it was, unmoving. I left the nursery, closing the door gently behind me, as if the truth inside needed rest. The quilt was still wrapped around my shoulders as I walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last, halfway to the living room. The house made a sound I hadn't heard in years. A soft thud, downstairs near the mudroom. I froze. My mother's house had always been predictable. It popped in the winter, groaned in the summer, and settled during storms. I knew its rhythms. I knew its voice. But that sound wasn't the house shifting. It was footsteps. Slow, deliberate, just one. My heart climbed into my throat. I crouched slowly, peeking down the staircase. The mudroom door was closed. The hall stood empty. Nothing moved, but the quilt around me felt suddenly warmer, almost protective. I whispered into the silence, "Mom, if you're trying to tell me something, I'm listening." The air felt thick, as if the house was holding its breath. I gathered every bit of courage I had left and went downstairs. The floor was cold beneath my feet. The shadows stretched long across the walls. And the mudroom door, the one that usually stuck in winter, was slightly ajar. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But enough. I pushed it open slowly. The room looked untouched. Boots still lined up in the corner. Coats hanging neatly. A faint smell of pine from the firewood. Nothing appeared disturbed, except the back door. Its lock was still set, but the deadbolt was unlatched. My stomach dropped. Someone had tried to get in, or someone had left. I reached out and touched the bolt. It was warm, recently touched. I stepped back, feeling the world shift under me. Who had been at that door? A neighbor? A trespasser? Or the same person my mother had spent her life hiding me from? The letters in the wooden box came rushing back into my mind. He will never stop looking. I swallowed hard and returned upstairs, locking every door behind me. When I reached the living room, I hovered over the letters spread across the table. I needed answers, names, places, anything I could follow. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The last envelope Alice, my aunt, my mother, left behind was thicker than the rest. Heavier. I picked it up and turned it over. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a police report, dated 40 years earlier. My hands shook as I read the first line. Missing person report, Eleanor Rowan. Filed by Margaret Rowan. My aunt filed the report herself. But there was something else, written in small, hard-to-read type beneath the description of Eleanor. Primary person of interest, Henry Calloway. A name I didn't recognize. But one sentence in the report sent a chill up my spine, so sharp I had to sit down. Known to have pursued Eleanor across multiple counties. Pursued. Not dated. Not troubled. Pursued. And then the last line. Considered dangerous. Believed to have access to multiple properties. Properties. Houses. Cabins. Places someone could hide. Or watch. Or wait. I stared at the report long enough for my tea to go cold beside me. Henry Calloway. The man my mother ran from. The man who chased her across the state. The man who likely drove her into the winter that took her life. Was he alive? Did he know about me? A knock on the porch made me leap to my feet. I hurried to the window, expecting to see a neighbor. But when I pulled the curtain back, no one was there. Just snow falling softly, quietly, almost tenderly. But on the porch railing, resting gently in the snow, was a fresh, warm candle, its wick still smoking. Someone had just been there. Someone who knew about the candles, about the room, about Eleanor. And they wanted me to light it. My hands trembled as I opened the door and picked up the candle. It was warm, warm like it had been held, warm, like someone had been standing right there moments earlier, watching, waiting. The truth wasn't buried anymore, and neither was the past. The man my mother feared, or someone connected to him, was near, and I had finally stepped into the story my mother tried her whole life to protect me from. Chapter 5. The Woman Who Knew My Mother's Last Night. I didn't sleep that night, not because I wasn't tired, but because the house no longer felt like a place where people slept. It felt like a place where truths waited. The warm candle on the porch sat on the kitchen table like a living thing. I kept glancing at it as I paced the room, wondering who brought it, wondering if they stood in the shadows watching me pick it up, wondering how close the past was now, breathing around the corners of my life. By morning, I knew I couldn't stay inside the house drowning in questions. There was only one person in town old enough and brave enough to know the truth, Miss Eleanor Whitlock. Not my mother, but my mother's closest friend. Her name had come up in every whispered conversation between adults when I was a child. They called her the Vault because she carried secrets like stone, never letting them slip. If anyone had answers about Eleanor Rowan, it was her. I drove to her house just after sunrise. Her small cottage sat at the edge of the woods, chimney puffing smoke into the cold morning air. It was the kind of place where time didn't so much pass as linger. I knocked. A moment later, the door opened just a crack. One sharp blue, I peered out. She didn't greet me, didn't soften, didn't smile. She simply said, "I wondered how long it would take before you came." My breath stalled. "Miss Whitlock, I need to ask you about my mother." She opened the door wider, eyes studying me with a mixture of sorrow and caution. "Your mother," she said quietly, "or your real mother?" The words hit me like cold water. I stepped inside. Her living room smelled like old books, cedar, and something warm simmering on the stove. She motioned me to sit, but she remained standing, as if the weight of the truth kept her on her feet. I didn't waste time. "I know Margaret wasn't my mother," I said softly. "I found the birth record, and the letters, and the locked room," she interrupted. I nodded. A long, heavy silence followed, broken only by the ticking of a clock on the wall. Finally, she sank into the chair across from me, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "She never wanted you to find out this way," she whispered. "Not through fear, not through a candle." My skin prickled. "The candle," I repeated. "Why, what was it for?" Ms. Whitlock's eyes softened with memory. "Your real mother, Eleanor, she believed in signs. She believed that a flame could warn you, guide you, even protect you." She leaned back, voice growing distant. "The night she disappeared, a candle blew out in that room. Your aunt told me it went dark all on its own, right before Eleanor ran into the storm." My pulse quickened. "Ran? From who?" Ms. Whitlock looked at me, her voice trembling for the first time. "You already know the name. Henry Calloway." I exhaled, sharply, more a gasp than breath. "Why was he after her?" I asked. Ms. Whitlock's face tightened. "That man, he was obsessed. Eleanor worked for him at the mill. He grew attached, too attached. When she tried to leave the job, he followed her home. When she started seeing someone, he threatened her." I swallowed hard. "Someone? Who?" She hesitated. "Your father." My heart stumbled. My father?" She nodded. "A gentle man, a kind man, but he died before you were born. An accident, they said, though some of us never believed that." The room felt colder, suddenly, and after he passed, "Henry grew worse," she continued. "He believed you were his. He wasn't right in the head. He told Eleanor he'd take the baby if she didn't agree to marry him." My hands shook in my lap. "So she ran," I whispered. "She ran," Miss Whitlock echoed, "in the middle of a snowstorm. Your aunt tried to stop her, but she said she saw something outside the window. A shape. A man." The same way I had. The same way my mother must have felt. Before she vanished into the winter, I felt tears burn behind my eyes. What happened to her? I asked. Did he? Ms. Whitlock reached across the table and gripped my hands, her voice barely above a breath. Her body was never found. But we all knew. Everyone in this town knew. Margaret spent her whole life protecting you from that truth. From him. Silence stretched between us, heavy and sacred. Then she said something that made the bottom drop out of my world. He's still alive, you know. My heart stopped. What? She nodded slowly. Old now. Weak maybe, but alive. He's been seen on the outskirts of town. Keeps to himself. But once in a while, people see him watching the old Rowan house at night. My skin iced over. Watching the house. The shadow at the window. The unlocked deadbolt. The candle left on my porch. It wasn't random. He knew who I was. He knew where I lived. Miss Whitlock squeezed my hands with urgent strength. And child, if he brought you that candle, then he knows you've learned the truth. A shiver went through me, so deep it felt like it touched bone. But why? I asked, what does he want after all these years? Miss Whitlock pulled her hands away and sat back, eyes clouding with dread. He wants what he always wanted. The child he believed was his. I felt the room tilt. And if he can't have you, she continued, he will try to silence the story, just like he silenced her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, he knows you're looking for answers. He knows what you found in that room. And now he'll come. My breath tightened. When? Ms. Whitlock looked toward the window, voice trembling. When the candle goes out again. Chapter 6. The night the candle finally spoke. The candle flickered again that night, not with fear, not with warning, but with something I hadn't felt since the first day I stepped back into my mother's old room. Peace. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel haunted by secrets. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a child abandoned in the dark. For the first time since her death, I felt close to her again. But the story was not finished. The long-awaited visit, 3 nights after discovering the truth about my mother's hidden life, I woke up to the softest sound. A knock. Not urgent, not frightened, just gentle, like someone who didn't want to startle me. I opened the door expecting my aunt or the sheriff or even Mrs. Hawthorne checking in. But instead, there stood the man from my mother's secret letters. The man she wrote about with fear, with sorrow, and with trust. The man whose shadow I saw outside her window the night the candle first flickered. His hair was gray now, coat dusted with cold, his hands trembling slightly, as if he'd rehearsed this moment for decades. Ma'am, he whispered, voice breaking, I heard you found the room. My heart thudded. The candle in my mother's room burned steady behind me, glowing like it knew him. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, eyes scanning the house like he remembered every corner. When he saw the candle burning on her dresser, he froze. She kept that candle for me, he said, for the night I could finally come home. The truth he came to give. He sat at the kitchen table, same chair my mother used when she told me bedtime stories. His hands shook as he placed an envelope in front of me. I was supposed to give this to you when you turned 18, he said, but the people who hurt her, they were still watching. I was scared. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter written in my mother's neat, careful handwriting. A final message. I read it slowly, tears blurring every line. If she's reading this, it means he finally found the courage to come back. Please forgive him. He protected me when no one else would. My chest tightened. This man wasn't the villain. He wasn't the threat. He was the one who tried to save her, She saved my life, he whispered, face wet with quiet tears. And I spent the rest of mine trying to repay a debt I could never repay. He told me everything, how my mother hid the truth to protect me, how she fought to break free from the family secrets she was born into, how she trusted him to keep me safe when she no longer could, and how the candle was their symbol, a sign that the truth would one day find me, the candle's final message. After he left, the house felt lighter, almost warm. I walked into my mother's room one last time, the candles still glowing. Suddenly, the flame flickered high, a soft, bright stretch of light, and then slowly lowered itself until the wick finally went dark, not in fear, not in warning, but in completion, like it had done its job, like it had been waiting all these years for this moment. And when the room fell into silence, I felt it. The truth wasn't heavy anymore. It was freeing. My mother wasn't trapped in secrets. She wasn't hidden in shadows. She wasn't lost to the lies people told about her. She was finally at peace. And so was I. My dears, if you made it this far, thank you. Your presence means more than you know. Before you go, tell me where you're watching from. I truly love seeing this little family come together from every corner of the world. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more souls can find warmth and healing in these stories. Until next time, my loves, keep your candles burning, keep searching for the truth, and keep holding on to hope. Because just like my mother used to say, light always finds its way home.